Good afternoon and welcome to the City Club of Cleveland. I'm Hewitt Shaw, the President of the Board of Directors of the City Club. It's my pleasure to introduce to you today Cal Dooley, the President and CEO of the American Chemical Council, a trade association representing companies engaged in the $760 billion chemical industry. He joins us today to speak about the role of his industry in what is being referred to as America's manufacturing renaissance, the development of the vast domestic energy resources being discovered in our country. Mr. Dooley and his organization have been at the forefront of a national energy and awareness campaign known as From Chemistry to Energy, calling on policymakers to support the development of natural gas from shale while promoting energy efficiency and the development of alternative sources such as energy recovery and renewable energy sources. Mr. Dooley's topic today is particularly relevant to our region, with the Utica Shale Formation running just to the south and east of us. This formation offers the opportunity for dynamic economic development and revitalization of our region and our state, but carries with it its fair share of controversy and questions. We are fortunate to have with us today Mr. Dooley to speak to this timely issue. Mr. Dooley is a native of California, an undergraduate of the University of California, Davis, with a master's degree from Stanford. He worked as a rancher and in local politics before being elected to Congress, where he served until his retirement from Congress in 2005. He then served as the head of the Food Products and then the Grocery Manufacturers Association before taking on his current role at the American Chemical Council in 2008. Please join me now in welcoming to the City Club podium Cal Dooley.
Thank you, Hewitt.
Good to have you.
Well, thank you, Hewitt, and I'm delighted to be joining you on Good Friday, and I'm delighted to be part of the U.S. chemical industry. And Hewitt mentioned that I served for a period of time as a member of Congress, been 7 terms there, and I have to say, when you've seen some of the recent public opinion polls that have members of Congress being rated a little bit lower than used car salesmen and even Wall Street bankers, the only good news in the poll was the fact that they narrowly had a higher approval rating than Lindsay Lohan, about 44 to 42%. That's about as positive as it gets. But I think we all recognize that members of Congress have oftentimes suffered from difficulty and being looked upon favorably, and I can attest to that myself. I even had trouble getting some of my relatives to think highly of the work I was doing in Congress, and I oftentimes tell the story when I was running for Congress once, and I was trying to convince my uncle to vote for me, and I was giving him my best sales pitch ever, and he finally told me, he says, Cal, he says, look, I've only voted for one Democrat in my life. That's when I was on a jury, and I voted to hang him. And the only thing that's changed since that time, and I was kind of a moderate, kind of a pro-business Democrat, is now he not only wants to hang Democrats, he wants to hang the Republicans as well. And so, yeah, it does. I am delighted to be part of the chemical industry, and it's really, such a terrific time in chemical manufacturing. I came on board at ACC, the American Chemistry Council, in 2008. And when you take these type of jobs representing an industry, I spent a lot of time going around and talking to industry leaders, just trying to get an understanding of what they, forecast, what were some of their challenges, what were some of their opportunities. I came to Cleveland, met with James Hambrick, who leads Lubrisol, Craig Morrison, who is the CEO and president of Momentum, which is headquartered in Columbus, and went around the country, Houston, everywhere else, Dow, DuPont. And I'll tell you this, there was not one conversation with the CEO in 2008 representing the chemical industry that was talking about making major new investments in manufacturing in the United States. And now, just 4 or 5 years later, you can talk to every chemical leader, be they in the United States, be they in Brazil, be they in India, be they in Europe, and each and every one of them are now talking about making major new investments in chemical manufacturing in the United States. And why is that the case? There's really one reason, and it's because of shale gas. And this chart here will give you a little bit of an idea of just what's happened during that period of time. If you look up on the far, the right-hand side, that's our relative competitive position globally in 2005. We were actually one of the highest cost producers of chemicals globally. And because of shale gas and what that's done, we have now moved in 2012 to one of the lowest cost producers, one of the most competitive manufacturers of chemicals in the entire world. And why does natural gas and shale gas have such an impact on that? Well, in our industry, in the United States, natural gas is to chemicals as is flour is to bakery. We take the molecules from natural gas liquids, we break them apart, and we make just thousands of different chemicals that go into thousands of different products. And when you look at the United States chemical manufacturing, it's about 85% of our chemicals that we produce are from the feedstock of natural gas. And when you look globally, most of the other manufacturers of chemicals globally use oil or naphtha, which is derived from oil. And so there's a competitive balance historically when you would be indifferent from sourcing natural gas or sourcing your chemicals with a feedstock of natural gas or from oil. And that differential was usually about 7 to 1. And what that means is if you had a $4 MPDU natural gas, $4 is usually that, the term where the MTBU is what we're using as that unit of measurement. And you had a $7 or 20, or what is 1 to 4. So if you had a 1 to 7, so if you had $4 natural gas, that would equate to about $28 a barrel oil, where you would be indifferent. Well, now we're looking at a situation where you have $4 natural gas in the United States, and you have about $90 a barrel oil. And so that 7 to 1 ratio that would have been unbalanced, we're now looking at about 22 to 1. And that's what's giving us the opportunity to really capitalize on enhancing our global competitiveness and capturing increased market share. And there's a lot of people out there who say, well, how long will this last? Well, when you start looking globally, the United States has a real, again, an advantage because we're the first mover. We developed the technology that's allowing us to capture natural gas from unconventional sources, primarily shale. We have the infrastructure in place to transport that natural gas to manufacturers that can then convert it to products. We also have, in the United States, mineral rights which are owned primarily by on private lands that allow us, again, to have the financial incentives that allows us to capitalize on those. And if you look, there's a lot of natural gas throughout the world, too. Then people say, well, how long are we going to have the sustained advantage in the United States? Well, if you look at the Middle East, they've been, more of the conventional oil and gas production there. They have a lot of shale gas, but you know what they don't have? They don't have much water, which is needed in order to frack the shale formations and extract the natural gas from shale. You can look at China. China actually has a lot of natural gas, and they're going to be developing it over time, but they don't have the infrastructure in place. I don't know, you might have noticed or might have been aware about a year and a half ago, maybe it was just a year ago, China made or Sinopec, the state-owned company in China, made a major investment in Devon Energy, one of the leading natural gas producers in the United States. It was about a $2.7 billion investment. I refer to this as maybe the world's most expensive internship ever. What the Sinopec was doing was they're learning how to extract natural gas, which they're going to take from shale, which they're going to take back to China. Just yesterday, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal where you saw Shell that was making a major agreement and an investment in China with a Chinese state-owned company to begin the development and the exploration of the shale opportunities in China. But that's still going to be decades away before they can develop the infrastructure to capitalize on that. You go to Western Europe, they don't have the same mineral right situation. They have different land use values that also impede their ability to capitalize on it. So the bottom line is that we're very confident that the United States is going to have a competitive advantage for a sustained period of time. And this is something that you're now what is contributing to the significant flow of new capital investment in the United States. And these charts here that you can look at that kind of tell a little bit of the story too. If you look at that period around 2005, and this is again as what happened in terms of the production of chemicals, basic chemicals in the United States, you saw we kind of peaked during that period of time, and then we rapidly declined. We rapidly declined because in large part because of the bottom graph, which shows the comparison in terms of the cost of natural gas to oil. You saw the volatility there, and we were more expensive on a BTU basis, which harmed our competitiveness, which led to that decline in production in the United States. We lost about 120,000 jobs in the U.S. chemical industry during that period of time, almost 25% of our workforce. But the opportunity is when you're looking forward, and this was a study we did in conjunction with IHS, is that you look at the line as it rapidly increases there, and that again is the opportunity that we are poised to capitalize on. So here's the top line messages on this. We contend, because of where the chemical industry is in the value chain, that we are providing the foundation for a renaissance in manufacturing in the United States. And the numbers that are being invested today are significant. We keep a running total at ACC in the publicly announced capital investments in chemical manufacturing in the United States. And in the past 2 years, maybe 2.5 years, we are now up to 70 projects constituting about $55 billion in new investment in chemical manufacturing in the United States. And when I say it's the foundation for a broader renaissance in manufacturing, this chart a little bit kind of explains why that is the case. This was kind of the flour to the bakery, natural gas is to the chemical industry. We take the natural gas and we strip off the liquids. And so, having natural gas to power our electricity generation in the United States is not necessarily in all times creating increased competition for chemical manufacturing, because we want the natural gas liquids off the natural gas. You can still generate power with dry natural gas. And that's what's also important in Ohio, because the Utica Shale and the Marcellus Shale are what we consider wet gases. They have a lot of natural gas liquids, is what the chemical industry needs. And again, so we take the ethane and we run it through a cracker. And to give you another term, an idea in terms of how the marketplace has changed, in 2008 we were paying 93 cents a gallon for ethane. February of this year, 23 cents. When we run it through the cracker, what we do then is we make ethylene out of it and then that's what goes into the development of PVC, plastics, composites, that go into all these different applications here today that you see on this chart. And again, when you look at the comparative cost on the ethylene coming out of a cracker in the United States, today we're about $400 a ton. Ethylene coming out of a cracker in Europe today that is primarily oil-based is about $1,200 a ton. And ethylene coming out of a cracker in Japan is about $1,700 a ton. And so there's that competitive advantage that gives us a great deal of confidence. And what is giving confidence in the boardrooms of almost every chemical company in the world today to make those significant new investments here in the United States. And it's not just the chemical industry that is taking advantage of this. It's also a lot of energy-intensive industries. You've seen, new steel capacity being developed in the state of Ohio. You see new tire manufacturers, that are developing new plants in the United States. Something that was unheard of 5 years ago and 10 years ago. And it's primarily a result of the access to natural gas. So we had $55 billion in new chemical investments, but we also did a study where we looked at all these other energy-intensive industries, be it iron, steel, aluminum, paper, foundries, glass, and we also have calculated that they're going to see significant new investments that will contribute to maybe a total of up to $72 billion. We also have worked with PricewaterhouseCoopers, who did an analysis too in terms of what does this mean to the U.S. broader manufacturing sector. They have calculated, because of the increased supplies of natural gas in the United States, that annually it's going to result in a savings of $11.6 billion a year. We also are estimating that natural gas alone is going to contribute in the next period of 5 years or so to an annual increase of about 1% in our U.S. GDP, and be responsible for creating maybe as many as 1.7 million additional jobs. So this is, when you really look at it, I mean, this is, just a tremendous opportunity if we really commit ourselves to responding in an appropriate manner, and we create a regulatory environment that can allow us to fully capitalize on that. I want to be very complimentary of the work that Governor Kasich and his colleagues in the state legislature, both Democrats and Republicans, as well as the delegation that's in Congress that we work with as well. They fully understand that this is a competitive marketplace out there, is that you have a lot of states that are competing for new investments to capitalize on the shale gas. Ohio, though, is uniquely positioned because of the Utica and to a lesser extent Marcellus. We would acknowledge today that $55 billion in new investment I'm talking about in chemical manufacturing, about 80% of that is going into the Gulf region, the Texas, the Louisiana, because they have the existing infrastructure that's in place, so it makes sense. But over time, we're confident that you're going to see the investments that are going to flow to take advantage of the shale deposits and supplies in the Utica that are in the region here that Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia occupy. And this is some of the work that we've done too, is just to give you an idea of the magnitude that one of the crackers, if you had that built in Ohio, and Shell is currently doing a feasibility study just across the border in Ohio and Pennsylvania and outside of Pittsburgh. But if they move forward with that, or if anyone builds a new world-scale cracker, it's about a minimum of a $3.2 billion investment that would generate about $7.5 billion in additional chemical industry output from one cracker that would have a significant economic benefit as it moves throughout the value chain. It's about 17,000 additional permanent jobs. I mean, the chemical industry, I regret that we're not more labor intensive. We are a capital intensive industry, but every time we make these new investments, it generates downstream employment opportunities as well as provides the potential for additional generation of tax revenues. The one thing that is important though too, and this is where we have to get the regulatory environment right. And a lot of the work that ACC and some of our colleagues more upstream that have been involved in more of the production of natural gas is how do we make sure that we put the regulations in place that appropriately respond to some of the legitimate environmental, health, and safety regulations. It's important that we acknowledge that our communities have to be concerned with protecting our groundwater. We have to be committed to ensuring that the wastewater that is developed through the process of extracting this natural gas is managed in a responsible manner. As a chemical industry that is providing the chemicals that oftentimes go into the fracking fluids, we have to be assured that we're providing the appropriate disclosures there that can ensure that the public has the confidence that we have the capability to manage those correctly. So a lot of the work that's been done at the state, and this is where I think the state of Ohio under Governor Kacich's leadership has done an excellent job, is to make sure that we have responded appropriately to those. Because what's important to us, if we really are going to fully capitalize on this opportunity that the United States has, is that we got to make sure that we have the public's confidence, that we have the regulatory structure, that we can manage these potential vulnerabilities appropriately. We want to make sure we have the regulations in place that ensures that we do not have a supply constraint on natural gas. And it even goes beyond just natural gas. What we look at is one of the most important public policy issues facing this country in allowing the chemical industry and the broader manufacturing sector to capitalize on shale gas is to have it be part of a component of a broader domestic energy policy. The United States is unique in that we are blessed with not only significant natural gas supplies, we also have significant coal supplies, oil, but we also have to be fully committed to developing our nuclear and our alternatives and renewables. And none of those are mutually exclusive. But if we are going to ensure that we have the greatest economic opportunities going forward, we need to have a domestic energy policy that truly is all of the above, that is ensuring that we have a diverse energy portfolio of which to draw upon. Of course, some of the other issues are dealing with permitting. No company is going to make a $3.2 billion investment if they don't have the confidence that they're going to have permits that are going to be provided in a timely fashion. We also have issues related to infrastructure in terms of the transportation of that feedstock as well as the products. And also even on the tax treatment. We have conversations in Congress that are occurring now on whether or not we ought to have reform of our corporate tax structure. When you look at some of the size of the investments to capitalize on natural gas, they are very capital intensive. And issues related to accelerated depreciation to ensure that we are having the tax preferences that will encourage the flow of investment capital in a timely fashion so that we can capitalize on this window of opportunity are also very, very important that we, in order to take advantage of this wonderful opportunity that we have. The next chart I just want to touch on here, it's really, allows me to kind of, really, talk about, regulations matter. I don't think that there's been a time when we've seen kind of the divergence between the approach on energy policy and regulations in the United States versus some of our traditional competitors, in this case, in the EU. In the chemical industry and throughout the world, we're very multinational. Dow is investing throughout the world, DuPont's investing throughout the world, but BASF, German-based, they're doing the same, Bayer is doing the same, and it's a very globally integrated industry. And it's interesting, when I go around, and I was speaking with an EU-based company just on Tuesday, I guess it was, and it was kind of an interesting conversation. It's one that I'm hearing more and more often from EU-based companies, is that they're shifting their investment portfolio increasingly to the United States. When they're looking out, they see that their opportunities to gain a return on their capital investments are much greater here in the United States. And this chart basically sums it up, is that if you look at Western Europe in terms of this is their chemical production, is that we were on basically at parity with them by and large from 2000 to 2010. And now you see that dramatic disparity in terms of growth opportunities going forward, where the United States chemical industry is going to capture an increasing share of global demand, where the EU is actually going to see a decline. And regulations have some impact on that. Whereas in the United States, we are putting in place policies that are going to allow us to achieve an objective that we once thought was almost unimaginable in terms of becoming increasingly energy secure, if not energy independent, is that we see policies in the EU that are going in a much different direction. Where we have embraced the policies that allow us to capitalize on natural gas from shale. In France, they're banning it. In Romania, they're banning it. When you see our commitment to still take a market-based approach that will allow for the development of nuclear power generation in the United States, you see in the EU and Germany that they are making a national commitment to eliminate their nuclear generation over the next decade. And that divergence in terms of access to energy that can be before a feedstock as well as an integral component of manufacturing is playing a role in the contributing to this much different degrees of opportunities and job creation and investment in chemical manufacturing in the U.S. Versus the EU. And again, this is what is going to allow us in the United States to continue to capture a greater share of global demand. We're very proud in the chemical industry that we are, if not the leading, one of the leading export industries in the United States. Our industry constitutes about 12% of all of U.S. exports. It's about 190 billion in annual exports. And just to give you an idea of what's happening already in the trend line, I was in New Orleans, the port of New Orleans, just a few months ago. In New Orleans port, in just 1 year, there's been a 34% increase in chemical exports out of New Orleans alone. And when we look at what has happened in just the exports of plastic resins, in 2000, it constituted about 12% of our production. In 2012, currently it's about 22%. And when we look at another 10 years or so to the year 2022, we are going to be exporting about 33% of the plastics resins that are produced in the United States, which is one of the chief commodities of the chemical industry. And again, the foundation of this is really in our ability to capitalize on our unconventional natural gas resources from shale formations. And so, just in closing, as I just, want to also just relay a story I heard just last week. I was in Houston for an IHS petrochemicals conference. There was a couple thousand people there, and they were talking about the state of the industry and sharing a lot of the same information I've shared with you today. And there was one individual that had been with the industry for his entire career. It's 40 years. He was on the verge of retirement, and he was giving a keynote speech. And he said with some remorse, he said, I have spent the last 20 years of my career managing the decline of the chemical industry in the United States. And he said, I regret that I'm not going to be involved in this industry for the next 20 years when we be managing the opportunities that are before us. And so when we collectively look at something that a lot of us in public policy and business didn't dream would be the case even 5, 10 years ago, that the United States would be a net exporter of energy, that North America would be the leading energy-producing region of the world, that the United States could in fact see a resurgence in manufacturing would allow us to see new manufacturing, additional manufacturing jobs, enhanced investment in manufacturing capacity, and in fact a true renaissance in manufacturing and enhanced global competitiveness. We have a wonderful opportunity. And certainly, what my message is here today is that by collectively ensuring that we work with the federal government, state governments, and the private sector stepping up to respond to legitimate issues, we truly can capitalize and contribute to a renaissance in manufacturing. So thank you for allowing me to share some thoughts with you today.
Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we are listening to a Friday forum featuring Cal Dooley, President and CEO of the American Chemical Council. We will return to our speaker momentarily for the traditional City Club questions. Please formulate your questions now and remember to be brief and to the point. We welcome all of you here and those listening to 90.3 WCPN Idea Stream, WCLV, WTAM, or one of the many radio stations across the country. Our television broadcast partner is WVIZ Idea Stream. Television broadcasts of the City Club are made possible by Cleveland State University and PNC. Our live webcast is supported by the University of Akron. Closed captioning of our programs is made possible by the Nordson Corporation. Visit our website, cityclub.org, to watch live webcasts or to learn more about our upcoming forums or to listen to a podcast of any of our past programs. You can also follow the City Club on Twitter under the handle @TheCityClub or learn more about our programs on our Facebook page. We welcome guests today at tables hosted by Baker Hostetler. Thank you for your support. Now we would like to return to our speaker for our traditional City Club questions and answers. We welcome questions from everyone, including guests. Holding the microphone today is Program Director Carrie Miller. May we have the first question, please?
Mr. Dooley, thank you for a very informative talk. You can't cover all that much, though, in just a half hour, so let me move on to something. The opposition to fracking is largely based on the perceived dangers of the disposition of the fracking fluid. Now, we know there's water and there's sand in it. There's also a lot of chemicals in it. What I don't understand, and I was hoping you could clarify this a bit, in most every other manufacturing process where something is contaminated in the process, be it smoke going up into the air or a fullerant going into the water, there's a process to take the bad stuff out and allow you to dump what is left, rather than injecting millions of gallons of used fracking fluid in deep injection wells where nobody really knows what's going to happen to it eventually. Is there a process that you're aware of in the chemical industry that would react to these agents to either remove them, precipitate them out, or otherwise clean this stuff up?
No, and I would, I'm very proud of the fact that our industry is a solution provider in terms of playing a major role in terms of the treatment of wastewater, not only from fracking fluids, but from a whole host of sources. And there is regulations. All the wastewater that is injected into the wells is subject to an EPA regulation that has to be complied with. But what I think is important in our industry, we manufacture some of the fracking chemicals that go into fluids that then are used by the Halliburtons and the Schlumbergers and some of those folks that are, developing the wells, is that we believe that there needs to be the appropriate, again, transparency to ensure that the public and as well as the communities know just what is being used and how it is being treated too when it is coming back up, and that it has to be done in a very effective and appropriate manner. And this is, again, is absolutely essential. When we say we've been working to ensure that you have regulations that will not result in a constraint on supply, if we can't convince the American public that we are treating this water appropriately, that we are assuring that it's not going to jeopardize the environment, that it's not going to contaminate the aquifers, we're not going to be successful in maximizing the production. So our industry, and a lot of our member companies are involved in on some of the treatment, and what is the ultimate objective is the reuse of this water. We also have some members of our industry that are also trying to develop the new technologies that will result in far less water being used to frack. And sometime, and we hope in the not too distant future that you'll even see the development of chemicals and technology that will result in waterless fracking, because clearly when you look at where some of the shale is being developed, one of the greatest constraints on production is the availability of water. And when we look in the more broader sense in terms of one of the greatest resource constraints that the world faces today is having adequate water supplies for drinking purposes as well as agriculture as well as manufacturing. So our industry is investing significant sums of dollars to try to find ways which we can develop those technologies that will not only ensure the appropriate treatment, but also the less use of water for fracking.
Mr. Dooley, in your remarks, I believe you said that something like 80% of the capital investment is being made in the Gulf Coast. I recently read, I think it was called the Apex Pipeline, that they're talking about building a very expensive pipeline from here to Louisiana so they can build a new cracker, I take it, a new plant down there, a refinery, to take our wet gases and process them there. What can we do, or what should we be doing to possibly save that money as being paid for a pipeline to take it someplace else and build those crackers here? And even if it's for export, which it would suggest going to the Gulf Coast it might be, we can export from the Ohio River or the Great Lakes or the like. How do we get organized to do that play better?
Well, again, I was, have been complimentary of the work that Governor Kasich has done, as well as Governor Corbett as well as Governor Tomlin in West Virginia, is that I think that, all the, the states here have tried to, put together the programs that could effectively communicate to the broader industry, the chemical industry and the natural gas industry, that there's a commitment to ensure that we create a regulatory environment that is conducive to making those investments here. Right now what you have, though, is you do have, market forces at play here that are trying to, move natural gas to those regions where there's the infrastructure or the manufacturing capacity to capitalize on it. The one thing, though, is that is a constraint to some degree, though, is that it's easy to transport by pipeline the dry gas. The liquid gas is much harder to. And that's where I think you have the opportunity to find ways in which you can, they're not mutually exclusive, to find ways to strip out the natural gas liquids that would be more valuable to chemical manufacturing and still recognize that there's going to be some natural gas that's going to be exported to this region, if not to the Gulf Coast, to the Northeast to meet some of the heating needs there, which are predominantly fuel oil now. But the thing that I think we have to be, there's been some folks that have, suggested that we ought to, restrict even the transportation of natural gas from this region to the Gulf, or maybe even up into Canada. And the thing that you have to be a little bit cautious about putting arbitrary restrictions in place is that also could have an unintended consequence or adverse consequence of reducing the investment in the production of natural gas. And in some degrees, that also applies to one of the discussions that have been occurring in Washington, D.C. in Congress, and it's ongoing today. And it gets to what should be the national policy as it pertains to the exports of natural gas from the United States. That there's, a lot of concern that, if we're not careful here, we could export so much that you would see the increase in the price of natural gas or natural gas liquids here that would hinder our ability to capitalize on this enhanced global competitiveness. At ACC, we've given a lot of consideration to that, and we did adopt a policy just in February of this year, which we put it under our energy and competitive policy, is that we think one of the best things we can do, again, is that comprehensive domestic energy policy, where we fully develop all of our domestic energy supplies, which will then ensure that you'll have less volatility in the price of one of those components, be it natural gas. And then we also have to recognize is that the market is going to be the best determinant in the allocation of those resources. And as an industry that is one of the leading export industries, we need to be very dedicated and consistently dedicated to the exports of our plastic resins and other products that we manufacture, as well as the exports of natural gas. And so our policy as it pertains to exports is that we support the exports of natural gas consistent with our WTO obligations, and that is to FTA as well as non-FTA countries, as well as existing law. And the one area where there's still some discussion in Washington on the policy here is that the Department of Energy has the authority to consider national interest or public interest in granting the permit for an export facility. And there is some disagreement in terms of how expansive and what should be that criteria for the consideration of national interest. And there's still an ongoing dialogue that we're engaged in at ACC among some of our member companies to whether or not we can reach a consensus on that issue.
Mr. Dooley, you mentioned the regulations by different states which help to prevent the large amount of pollution which otherwise would occur. That certainly is true in certain states such as Massachusetts and New York, California, and probably Oregon have had a great history of regulation in that respect. But the fact of the matter is there are many states, particularly in the South, which are just the opposite, have very weak regulation of pollutants from the chemical industry or whatever. But recognizing the fact that the pollution is not state-wise, it's national-wise. Why shouldn't we have strong regulations on a national level to control pollution, whether it's in the air or the water? And would your council, the Chemical Council, be in favor of strong national regulations?
Well, we currently have, a significant portion of even the natural gas production that is still subject to the Clean Air Act that's under the jurisdiction of the Environmental Protection Agency. So they have jurisdiction related to emissions that could be involved with the production of natural gas. They clearly have jurisdiction over emissions that are generated by manufacturing facilities, be they in the chemical industry or any other manufacturing. So they do have that authority. They also, the EPA, has national authority over wastewater treatment and facilities and from manufacturing applications. And so the one area, though, that they don't, which we think is appropriate, is when you look at some of the specific regulations in terms of relating to drilling and even fracking, is because of the differences in geology, the difference in location of the stratas where the natural gas is. We think that is more appropriate regulated under the states. And also when you look at just the needs for that would be required in additional manpower for EPA to be involved in what oftentimes are site decisions on individual well sites. If you put all the jurisdiction at EPA, it would be a significant burden that we think that the states and their regulatory infrastructure they have in place have the capability and the personnel and the regulations that can be more responsive to local issues. So I think we have a nice balance now. We have EPA that has jurisdiction over a lot of components of it in terms of the emissions, the air emissions that have to be complied with under the Clean Air Act. But we're giving the appropriate, I think, responsibility and jurisdiction in terms of some of the land use, the site development, and the extractions to the state jurisdictions. And so I think it's actually a pretty good balance to date.
Among the many states that are regulating, as you point out, I'd like you to describe one that you feel is at the best level of careful regulation for environmental health and personal health. And in particular, as we know in many industries, there's a development of best management practices. I'd like to know about if that is on the horizon for this industry, for the shale gas industry.
Yeah, I have to, qualify my response here a little bit. We're not, the chemical manufacturers are not involved with the production of natural gas. And so, we work as partners with them and have been involved in some aspects of it in terms of where we have a shared interest. And this would be in issues related to transparency and the disclosure of some of the fluids that might be used in the fracking. But a lot of when you get to the issues that I think have been of greatest concern to a lot of communities is what are the best practices to ensure that aquifers will not be contaminated? How do we ensure that the wells that are being sunk, that they're double and triple lined, that would mitigate any risk of contamination of the aquifer? Most people, I think, today now understand that the shale formations are generally thousands of feet below the aquifers that we're drawing well water for drinking from. So, and I think the industry has done a pretty good job in terms of developing, a lot of those best practices that they're working with the state regulators to put them in place to make sure that they're ensuring that these practices are being implemented. In terms of the states which have done a good job is, and again, this is just, I'm a little bit removed from this, but I've been, just from what I have read, I've been most impressed by what Colorado has done, and Governor Hickenlooper, however you pronounce it, There's a Democrat governor there that is, I think, has done a good job in working in a collaborative fashion. It seems to have built, pretty broad support for the way that they've been approaching their regulation from the environmental community as well as the industry. And so I think that, there's a pretty good model that they put in place on a lot of issues there.
Mr. Dooley, it's really quite exciting hearing your comments regarding the production and leadership in the world of the United States in the area of natural gas. Considering our dominance now and in the immediate future, as you described, is there an OPEC in our future?
I think that, we do use the line now that, we've kind of become the Saudi Arabia of natural gas in the United States. But I think that it's difficult to see how with natural gas, it has some impediments in terms of transportation that will make it more difficult to achieve what the Middle East and the OPEC countries have been able to do because it's easier to transport oil than it is natural gas, and it's much more costly. And so I think what you're going to see develop with the natural gas industry from a global context is it's still going to be subject to regional pricing because it is very costly. By the time you took natural gas, let's say it's at $4 now, you ship it to, or you transport it by pipeline to a liquefaction plant. By the time you compress it, it's about $4 there. It's another maybe $3 to compress it, another $3 to transport it. You get to almost an additional, $8 or so, just from $8 additional from the wellhead price to transport it today. And so that is going to, and because of the competition globally there, that there's going to be other, conventional sources of natural gas as well as unconventional sources, I think it's going to make it difficult for the United States to exercise such a market power that's going to have a significant global impact on the pricing of natural gas, which is what you have to have if you're going to create a cartel such as Saudi Arabia and OPEC have done. So I think it's a little bit different dynamic. But if we fully commit ourselves to developing our domestic energy resources, and I stress that's not exclusive of alternatives and renewables, is that we are going to be increasingly energy independent. And what that does for our domestic economic opportunities, but also from an international security situation. If we do what we have the capability of doing, who gets harmed the most is Venezuela and potentially, Russia and the Middle East. And some of those areas have been the source of some of our greatest international challenges that, what we have the potential to do here goes even far beyond even the economic benefits it could provide for the United States.
Mr. Dooley, I think we've gotten this far in the discussion without hearing the phrase climate change. And I would ask you to address how that hazard fits into the planning that your industry does. And I realize we're not dealing with you as representing drillers, but from fracking, one of the consequential, if invisible, hazards is release of methane into the environment. Could you comment generally on how your industry reacts to climate change and perhaps specifically on the hazards related to drilling for natural gas?
I'd be delighted to. Is that, I think it's also interesting. If you even look over since I think it's 2007, is that we've seen the reductions of carbon emissions in the United States decline. I've heard two different figures, one 7 and the other was about 9% over that short period of time. Now, some of that was a function of the soft economy, but some of it was a function, too, of the shift from more coal-fired to natural gas-fired electricity generation, as well as some of the increased miles per gallon that we've achieved through our CAFE standards. And so we're headed in a pretty positive direction, I think. And some of that's going to be a function of regulation, but a significant portion of it's going to be a function of the marketplace in terms of natural gas contributing to a degree of fuel switching, and natural gas, in relative terms, is a much cleaner burning fuel. It's somewhat ironic that when you look at what is happening today and you contrast what's happening in the U.S. with the EU, and a lot of those nations there are importing coal from the United States. And so where they have been very proud of themselves and patting themselves on the back in terms of a relative decline in emissions over the past few years, a lot of estimates now are because of their increased reliance on coal, at least for a transition fuel in this shorter term, they're going to see an increase in their emissions. When we get back to the broader issue of climate change, our industry is very proud of the fact that since 1990, we've had the reduction in our emissions from our own facilities and an increase in our energy intensive that would be compliant with the Kyoto Agreement if it was implemented today. Our industry would be. And we're also very proud of the fact that when you look at the solutions that we are provided, I don't know if there's another industry out there that is contributing more in terms of developing new technologies and products that are allowing our customers and in-use consumers to live more sustainable lives. And this gets to the fact, if you look at all the insulations, they're a product of the chemical industry. If you look at the plastics and the composites that are lightweighting vehicles that are allowing them to get more miles per gallon, they're a product of the chemical industry. When you look at the paints and the coatings that are contributing to greater energy efficiency in buildings, they're a product of the chemical industry. When you even look at the alternatives and the renewables, if anyone looks at a solar cell, it's basically chemicals that make up the films and the plastics. The composites on wind turbine blades are basically epoxy resins that allowing them to be more efficient and structurally sound as we get them more efficient when they get them bigger or longer. So, our industry, we actually did a study in conjunction with McKinsey and Company where they analyzed 100 different products of the chemical industry. And they calculated that for every 1 unit of emissions that we generated in the manufacturing of those products, that the use of those products saved 2.5 units. So our industry feels that we have a great story to tell in terms of our contributions, in terms of technologies and innovations that will contribute to reduced carbon emissions. And we're not only doing it on the new products, but we're also doing it in enhancing the efficiency and the reduction of emissions with our own facilities.
Mr. Dooley, as you acknowledged earlier, your council represents manufacturers, not producers of energy. And probably the primary concern of people in Ohio about shale production is the production issues, not the manufacturing issues. The one way I see that your industry influences that very directly is by what you'll pay for the product. And if the product cost goes up, well, the pressure is to keep product costs down because everybody wants cheaper products. They want good, efficient products, but they want them at a lower price. So my question is, what is your industry willing to pay, or what do you think DuPont or Shell in the non-production side, in the chemical producing side, would pay for better regulation and even maybe higher taxes to have better inspections in Ohio? One of the criticisms in Ohio is that we don't have enough inspectors for wells right now. I think we have like 92, and people think we ought to have like twice that. So is the industry, the manufacturing industry, willing to support things like that, which might raise their costs?
Well, I mean, that's a difficult question. I mean, what are we willing to pay? I mean, we pay what the market, requires. And if there are additional regulations that are put in place on the producers that are going to contribute to additional cost of that resource, we're going to be, paying it. And that's really, when we look at the projections, it is, we have a high degree of confidence that if we responsibly develop our natural gas resources in the United States, and that would include the appropriate regulations, is that we are going to have a sustained competitive advantage in the United States for chemical manufacturing as compared to, our global competitors. And so I know that's not a, direct answer, but I can't really, I can't really give you one. We're in the business of, of responding to market prices, and that is inclusive of the regulatory costs that are associated with those. Thank you.
Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we have been listening to a Friday forum featuring Cal Dooley, the President and the CEO of the American Chemistry Council. Thank you, Mr. Dooley. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This forum is now adjourned. Thank you very much. It was very good.
For information on upcoming speakers or for podcasts of the City Club, go to cityclub.org.
PNC is proud to support the presentation of this City Club of Cleveland Friday Forum on WVIZ PBS.
Additional support comes from Cleveland State University. Support for closed caption transcripts of City Club forums is provided by the Nordson Corporation Foundation.